something, not from nothing.
Okay, so ask the same question, the creation of God.
God didn't begin to exist, so it doesn't apply to God. I've told you this several times, but you're not listening.
That's where you are just making it invalid, okay?
Which part of that you didn't understand?
Apply the same rules on everything.
Okay, did God begin to exist?
For me,
By definition, if you're talking about God, you should at least know what God is. If God did not even begin to exist, then how can you say it should apply to God?
But for my logical mind, what I believe, everything has a beginning, okay?
Everything meaning what? Everything material or immaterial?
Everything that exists has had a beginning.
Okay, everything material or immaterial? What has a beginning?
I'm not talking about anything immaterial. There is nothing.
Do you believe that? Do you believe in? There's nothing that's immaterial? Really?
What is immaterial? Tell me one thing.
Your consciousness. Do you believe you have consciousness? Oops, the penny dropped. I like that. He's thinking. That's a good sign. Do you believe in your consciousness? Can you give me empirical evidence for it? Observable, verifiable, yes? Provable that you have consciousness? How do you know you're not a brain sitting in a jar somewhere? And this is all just a matrix.
This consciousness also could be the part of my way of thinking or something else.
Yeah, it includes everything. Your emotions, your consciousness, your cognition. All this is linked to your consciousness. In fact, your ability to ask all these questions and counter questions, it comes from your consciousness. But can you prove your consciousness? Because it's immaterial. How can you prove it? You can't, my friend. As an atheist, you have to believe it by faith. You have to believe it because everybody else tells you that you have consciousness. Well, prove it to me in science, scientifically. Because science is all about observation, about verification. Yes?
Yeah.
Can you verify and observe your consciousness?
But it is unscientific and
What's unscientific? Your consciousness.
No, it's unscientific and illogical to believe something without the evidence or.
But you believe in your consciousness, right?
Yeah, consciousness is the product of my understanding and observation.
Do you have evidence for it? That you have consciousness? What happened?
You know, you're going into a different topic. Anyway.
No. I'm actually using the same questioning that you question God with. You see, God is not something that is material or physical. Yes, that you will find Allah will come here in front of you and then you'll believe it. Yes, because this is a test, as I said. I'm asking you, your own self, wait. Your own self you don't understand. Your own consciousness you don't understand. And you want to know the other immaterial, which is God. First, believe that you yourself have consciousness. In fact, you believe it already, but without evidence, without science verifying it, without any proof for it. You already believe it. Think about that. You see, so there are things in this life, my friend Anu, there are things in this life which you believe in without evidence, without proof, without verification, just because everybody else tells you so. Yes? But then when you ask the same questions about Allah, ask the same questions about yourself first.
But for other things, questioning is like they encourage to ask you a question.
Just like I encourage you to think, yes, about your consciousness.
But in religion.
So why do you believe your consciousness? Wait.
Question is
I want to ask you this question. Why do you believe in your consciousness without evidence? Why? Why do you believe in the immaterial without any scientific evidence or proof?
Look, as you are telling me, the conscious is immaterial matter.
Do you agree with that?
I need to find out what it is exactly first.
You don't know what's consciousness?
You are picking just one point. Because
that is the main point.
No. You are making a main point because
for you that is the main point because you don't believe in the immaterial. Okay, define to me what consciousness is. If you don't know, I'll tell you. No problem. Many people don't know.
You tell me.
Consciousness is basically just your awareness of your surroundings and your existence. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Consciousness. Okay. Are you aware that there are people around you and that you exist?
Yeah, that comes from reality as well.
Yeah, your consciousness determines the reality. So, for example, if there was, let's say, a computer-generated scenario in front of you, your consciousness will tell you. Yes, depends how good or how bad that computer generated scenario is, that whether that is real or unreal. But if you decide that is real, you came to that conclusion based on your consciousness. Yes, your awareness, your ability to determine things around you.
Yeah, and,
Okay?
and this ability comes from
Your consciousness.
The amount of knowledge and information you
Yes,
have.
and for that you need consciousness. Your consciousness drives your emotions.
but-
It drives your cognition. It drives your ability to think, your ability to question, your ability for your intellect. All this, the central, processing unit for that is your brain, which actually
but it can be
is your
developed.
consciousness,
Yeah,
where it is in your body
But
basically.
it can be developed by your own experience and
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
You know, so what
So that still
what
proves
I
that.
look around here or looking at the faces, what I see,
Yeah.
someone else will see something different. They can pick up more information.
But that is only being subjective about it.
Yeah.
But you still have to believe in consciousness. You see what I mean? Without proof, without evidence, without any other scientific method of empirical evidence, you still believe in it.
But consciousness, I don't think is immaterial because
Okay, where is your consciousness?
it is not because
Have you seen it under a microscope? Your consciousness?
the reflection of reality.
No. Have you seen any evidence that you have consciousness under a microscope? Has anyone seen it?
But how do you judge something what is existent? Like you feel it, you hear it, or you can touch it through your senses.
Yes.
So this
And that is dependent on your consciousness. You need to be
So
conscious.
your consciousness is also part of that feeling as well.
No.
What you feel.
Now what you're doing is you're mixing your 6 senses with your consciousness. So imagine this: somebody is unconscious. Yes, can they depend on any of those 6 senses?
No. The thing is, you saying consciousness is immaterial,
Yes, and so is your emotions.
but something is.
For example,
connected.
do you have a pet? You have a pet like a cat or a dog?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What, a cat?
Yes, says cat. Yeah.
Okay. How do I know that you love your cat more than your mom? Can you determine this in a lab? You say I love my cat, and then you say I love my mom.
Look,
Can you tell anyone out there that you love your cat more than your mom or your mom more than your cat? Can you prove this to them?
you can't prove it, but
You know why?
it will reflect. It will reflect.
No, wait.
By your attitude.
Your reflection can be a made up thing. So you can say with your mom, Mom, I love you, but in your heart, I'm not saying you, by the way. In your heart, you don't really love her,
Yeah.
and you love your cat more.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So you can lie and you can make up the scenario
And
such
that's
that you're
why
loving him.
That could be subjective. As you're going through the same argument. So, if I tell my mom what I actually mean, you can't read my mind.
But that is my point.
Yeah.
You cannot prove your emotions scientifically. Does that mean they don't exist? Does that mean you don't have love in your heart? Are you with me? Love is immaterial. That's the reason you cannot prove it in a lab. Your emotions, yes, your hatred, your love, let's say your generosity, your kindness, all these things are your emotions which you cannot prove in a lab. So earlier you saying, give me an example of something that is immaterial. I gave you many.
But what goes through your mind actually reflects by your attitude or your action.
Yeah, but you can still pretend.
You can pretend as well, but
So it's not reality then?
But generally, it comes through.
No,
action.
there are many pretenders out there. In fact, all the actors do that.
Yeah.
Yes? You see, in a movie, you might see that this actor is so good that the way he portrays his emotions is amazing. But in his real life, he might be completely different.
Yeah.
So in a movie, he might be playing the role of someone who cracks jokes all the time, is really lively, he might be a joker. Yes? But in his real life, he might be miserable.
Yeah, but they feel it. For the set of the camera, they feel it, so they're
Made up emotions.
Made up, yeah.
Which means it's not real.
But they try to feel it. That's why.
Do you not understand the point I'm making? I'm telling you that there are immaterial.
I understand it's made up. At the
No.
same
Do you
time.
believe now there are things which are immaterial and material? Do you think there are?
If you put yourself in that position, then similar expression will come out.
I know. Do you not understand what I'm telling you? Do you at least believe now that there are things which are material and immaterial? Do you believe that or not now?
Okay,
Not if.
if
I'm
put
asking
this
you.
Emotion and those.
Yes.
called the
Are they material or immaterial?
then This is not material at the same time. It is connected to a physical thing.
Which is what? Connected to what?
Like
Consciousness,
if you-
which is not physical
yeah,
either.
if you are dead, your consciousness goes, isn't it?
How do you know that?
Your consciousness
How do you know that?
does not exist.
How do you know? There are scientific studies which show recently that the dead can hear even without the consciousness for a few minutes after death. Recent studies.
Yeah, but
But my point is not that. My point
it
is
could be.
my point is not what you cannot,
Look,
what you can prove.
you can
My
even-
point is what you cannot
yeah,
prove.
You can transplant some body parts as well within say even 3 days.
Say-
Doesn't mean those body parts.
I'm not talking about.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not talking about.
If you transplant
I'm
the
not talking
eyes
about a person
in
who
2-3 days.
is dead. I'm talking about you as a live person.
Just
Do you
be
believe?
there.
Do you believe as a live person that you have certain emotions and consciousness which are immaterial, which no one out there can prove? Like the amount of love you have, the amount of hate you have, the amount of your generosity, all this is linked to your consciousness.
Yeah.
All of these are immaterial. Do you believe that or not?
And the consciousness only exists when you exist.
According to your understanding, but I believe that we have a soul which
Yeah,
now
you can think anything, or you can be very happy thinking of your reward of afterlife. But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't mean it's a matter of being happy. You know.
it's not about happy or not.
It could be.
You know,
it could be
in-
all made up wrong.
Anu, in this conversation, I've proved to you that there are things which are immaterial and you have.
It didn't prove anything.
Okay,
Well-
can you prove your love?
I just,
Let's see if we can do that.
I just told you.
What?
What goes into your mind comes out through your action. And secondly, what you think inside your mind, it happening because you are alive.
That's got nothing to do with my question. Do you know what my question is? My question is, can you prove your emotions scientifically? With empirical evidence.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
You can?
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
prove to me your love. Go on. Prove to me that you love your cat more than
Yeah.
your mom,
No,
or
no,
your
no.
mom more than your cat. Go on,
Yeah,
prove it to me.
When you have true feelings, it will.
How do I know it's true?
It will be expressed through your.
How do I know you're not acting?
Facial expression, through your voice.
Actors do that all the time. Through the voice, through facial expression, through their...
But
That's why it's called acting.
Yeah.
Do you know what acting means?
Acting
Acting means something which is
acting doesn't
unreal, you
mean-
can make it real.
Okay, acting doesn't mean always is just.
I never
faking.
said always.
Okay, acting doesn't mean just faking. Acting means
I never said always.
putting yourself there and think like them, so a real expression will come out.
But how do you know it's real expression? Do you have evidence for... You know what empirical evidence means? Empirical evidence means, for example, if I keep you and this other gentleman in a room, yes? And then I ask you, how did you feel the temperature was? So he might tell me it was warm. You might tell me it is cold. You both are human. You both were in the same room. But your subjective experience of your environment, the room is different. Now I come and I say I can prove it objectively with empirical evidence what the exact room temperature is. All I need is a thermometer. Now that thermometer shows me empirical evidence what the exact temperature of that room is. So whatever you say or he say is regardless for me, because now I have empirical objective evidence. Can you do the same with love?
You can express it by your action.
Is that objective?
I just told you.
Is that objective or subjective? I want objective evidence, not subjective. Just be sincere and say you can't, because the scientists haven't invented a machine by which they can test the amount of love or hate that you have for a certain individual objectively.
By what I.
Objectively means,
Okay.
for example, there is
Whether
a
it's
empirical evidence for
objective
it.
or subjective, it only exists when you exist. It can't exist by itself.
I didn't say it exists by itself. I said when you are alive, you feel emotions.
Yeah.
How can you prove to me that you have emotions, even emotions? Because you could be acting. Yes? To express your emotions. You could be acting all your life. You might be really miserable, but you feel you're showing people that you're happy. I'm not saying you're like that. I'm just giving an example. Yeah. What I'm saying is that because you do not have objective empirical evidence, but you still believe that you have emotions, you still believe you have consciousness. That is my whole point.
Yeah, I mean,
So now we
it's
have-
a reality. Without my consciousness, I wouldn't be alive.
Exactly.
I'd be disabled, just lying.
Exactly my point.
In a bed.
But you believe in it without empirical evidence. Do you understand that? You believe it without looking at it, without seeing any evidence for it. Now this is
You're
exactly
missing the point.
this is exactly why I believe that there is an immaterial world and a material world. That's the reason I believe that there are things beyond what science. You see, science is a tool, which is a good tool to observe things of the material world, the naturalistic world. But it is completely useless when it comes to immaterial world because it's beyond the scope of science. It is like me, if I want to dig a hole in the ground, yes, I would actually use an equipment which is able to do that. Now, if I use this, just this, let's say this bottle, this part to dig a hole, will I be able to do it?
No, no.
Why? Because I'm using the wrong tool. Similarly, if you keep saying science, this, science, that, yes, in order to prove God, you need science. Science cannot cope with immaterial world. So it is beyond the scope of science
But in
to prove to
reality-
you
but in my reality,
about God.
In my reality,
your consciousness is your reality, and you
look,
couldn't prove that to me.
In my reality, there is nothing immaterial.
Your consciousness, I gave you. You see, after all this conversation, he comes back to the same thing which was in his head. I proved to you your emotions,
But
your consciousness. I gave you examples.
Yeah,
But at the end, after listening to all this, you're saying I don't believe in emotions. I don't believe in my consciousness even.
That's not what I'm saying.
Do you believe in your consciousness? Do you believe in your consciousness or not?
Yes, I do.
Do you have-
As long as I'm alive. and
Okay.
I can
Do you have evidence that you have consciousness? Material evidence, empirical evidence, objective evidence.
You're just rattling around with this. I mean, it makes
I'm rattling around.
It makes no sense to me what you're talking about. I was talking about different.
You know, when you can't answer the question, it doesn't make sense all of a sudden. That is
Okay,
that is
thank
being
you.
insincere. Anyway, I think we should stop here because for you to accept your own self, you need sincerity. For you to accept your own consciousness, you need sincerity. You know what Allah says in the Quran about you as a human being? You have to look for signs in the furthest of horizons and within yourself. Yes? Within yourself is your consciousness, and you are denying those. So Allah has given you signs and you deny that.
I didn't deny. I said it's part of my existent material. Like
So you think consciousness is material?
I can think of my consciousness and everything in my mind. It because I exist.
No, is your consciousness material? If it is, why can't you show me example?
There's different argument. I need to do a research on this, right?
No, but you already made up your mind. You said there is nothing immaterial. You made up your mind already.
Yeah, but
Am I right?
That's the thing. I mean,
Is that a what is a logical thing to do?
According to science, or thing, there is nothing immaterial, or even there is, we should not believe.
That's
it.
because you're using the wrong tool. Science is not a tool
Without-
to determine immaterial things.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Science only observes the naturalistic world,
Yeah.
and it gives you based on its
Yeah.
understanding
You-
what is.
you
But if
might
it cannot
be-
even see it,
okay,
how can it?
You might be happy with the non-existent or immaterial afterlife or whatever.
Shall I tell you something? There is not a single scientist.
It doesn't exist for me, right?
Okay, there's not a single scientist who does not believe in consciousness. Not a single credible scientist who rejects consciousness. And there is not a single credible scientist who can prove with empirical evidence that consciousness exists.
So who is denying the consciousness?
No one. That's what I'm telling you.
So what are you telling me?
What I'm telling you is they believe in consciousness based on faith.
I'm not denying either, okay?
You are not?
I've been telling you for last many minutes
Okay.
that it's part of my existence.
But is it material or immaterial?
Then it'll go into I can pretend on all the stuff.
Yeah, why not? That's the reason I ask you for empirical evidence. You know what empirical evidence is? Like the room temperature, which you cannot deny. Two people can get different, feeling about what the temperature of the room is.
By thermometer could be faulty, isn't it?
What if it's not faulty? Then do you believe it? Are you saying all the thermometers in the world are faulty?
Then you need to pick the average conclusion.
No, there are.
If you pick with that,
If you're going to use such logic that the thermometer is faulty, are you telling me that you can never find the temperature of the room? Objectively, or you can?
anyway, brother.
Anyway, I think you have not much to say because as an atheist, you will not have answers to this unless and until you believe that there are things beyond the naturalistic world which you cannot understand by science. If you're going to revolve your entire life on science, then you are actually looking at the world with one eye. Just with the naturalistic world. There is an immaterial world in yourself and beyond yourself as well. But you cannot have evidence for empirical evidence even within your own self, like your emotions, like your
But
consciousness.
the science does not tell you what to think. It gives you the information to enhance your way of thinking.
Yeah, but
How you
but
see the
science
world.
cannot be used as a tool for immaterial things. Do you not agree with that?
That's correct because
Good. That's all I wanted to say.
Science doesn't allow this.
So why are you asking for science for God then?
No, but
If you have realized that
you
science
are
cannot be
bringing
used
up
as a
this.
tool,
Science doesn't accept this immaterial thing or all this.
who told you that? They accept the consciousness. They accept. You just said it. No one denies it.
Consciousness does not come from nothing. It comes only from a living human or a living creature.
I never said it comes from nothing. When did I say that?
So
Why you making
Yeah, so
putting words in my mouth that I never
Yeah.
said? I'm saying
So what he's saying
for
is-
anything that exists, that begins to exist, you need a cause. Then I told you for anything immaterial, there are things beyond the material world, and I proved that with your consciousness, with your emotions
But
and
you
so
are
on.
saying, okay,
You believe that without
you are
any
saying
proof.
consciousness is immaterial.
Yes, and you still believe it.
But I think it could be a material thing as well because it doesn't exist without a living creature, you know.
No, wait.
It comes-
If you think that consciousness is material, then the onus is on you to prove to me with empirical evidence, and you can never do that.
No, I can do a research. I can
Okay, do
by,
your
by
research.
a religious person. I cannot say, hey, I just do.
Go. You're not a religious person. Go and do the
But
research
the thing
and
is,
come back to me next time
I can do
and show
research,
me
yeah.
because go and look on the internet for this term, the heart problem of consciousness. Do you know why it's called a heart problem? Because everybody believes in it, yet those people who look for scientific evidence don't have evidence for it. Anyway, with this, I think I should leave the conversation here.
Okay, brother. Thanks for
Yes,
your
no
time.
problem. Thanks for your time as well. And inshallah, I hope you believe in the religion that you were born in with Islam. And if you want to have more evidence about it, do not ask questions which you yourself have no evidence. For example, I asked you about the immaterial world. Yeah. No, you can ask questions, that's fine. But as long as you're sincere, you still need sincerity. When the truth has come to you, you need to accept it.
I have gone through all these.
No,
all
you haven't.
All those books.
I don't think you have
all
come
those-
into the consciousness
all those-
argument
all
before.
those teachings, all those books, everything, and it's all same thing. I mean, if
How many
one
books
is,
did you read on Islam?
if one is
Give me
true,
one book other than the Quran you read on Islam.
So what else? What other books?
No, you said you have read it all.
You have Quran, Hadith, Sirat Rasulullah,
Yeah.
and in
Which seerah did you read of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam?
Ibn Ishaq.
Ibn Ishaq is in Arabic.
I do not read Arabic. I read my own language or English. You know.
Okay. So do you accept the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a messenger of God or you don't?
No, I don't.
Based on what?
Based on like there have been many claimants who claim the same thing, being the messenger of God.
Yeah, of course there are. We don't believe there's only one messenger.
Yeah.
We believe there are many
No,
messengers.
okay. Other than those,
Yeah.
in other religions, non-recognized religions as well. Okay, I told you more than 4,000 religions. So you believe how many prophets? Even other ones. But all those activities and all those things written in the Quran, it doesn't make realistic.
Okay, what is it in the Quran you think is unrealistic? Just the Quran.
There are so many.
Give me one example. Go on.
I can okay. Look, I don't. First of all, I'll give it to you. I'll tell you, but I don't want to make this argument any longer because
Okay, no
I
problem.
can go
Next
for
time.
hours.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is,
But you have read the Quran, yes?
There are lots of unscientific materials in the Quran, unscientific or.
But we don't believe the Quran because science tells us to. Our faith in the Quran is not based on science. The Quran never claims to be a book of science. It is a book of science.
But to make it.
Allah says
to
ayat,
make it
the signs of
sensible
Allah.
Or believable, it has to be truth, isn't it?
Yeah, but how will you identify the truth if you don't even know that your consciousness is material or immaterial?
But what material?
If you don't know yourself,
Okay.
how can you come to the conclusion it's truth?
If there are verses about material world and forget the immaterial chapters,
Yeah.
if they talk about material matters, and if science prove to be wrong, I mean those verses to be wrong and faulty and like very dark ages concept, you know. So
Do you know that science itself evolves and changes?
it does, yeah.
Like there was a point in time when the scientists of those days used to believe that the earth is flat. Yeah? At that time everybody accepted it. Then later on when they had more evidence, then they found out no, the earth is not
Then-
flat. No, wait, listen to me. So you see, science cannot be used as something that is rock solid, because it is something that shifts as new information comes in. So
And
wait a
because
minute,
everything is changing over time.
wait. So you cannot use science as your, what do you say, as your yardstick to measure the truth, because science's truth changes over time as it finds new information.
Science is the reality, and
No, it's not reality.
the
Science is based on observation of the current time.
The nature and everything is changing over time. So
I just gave you an example of the truth that has changed.
Science is right at the present. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah, but it can be false tomorrow, right?
If new evidence comes, it can
Yeah.
be false tomorrow. But
So until that new evidence comes, you will believe that the false truth is the truth.
But what religion says to be true, it generally are false.
Give me an example from the
They've-
Quran,
they've-
and then we'll go.
They've been false from the beginning. I mean,
Yeah, but the same thing applies to science then. Then you shouldn't believe in science either. You're using double standards now.
But science is not arrogant, and science is not telling you either to believe it or, I mean, it doesn't force you to do anything.
No one forces anyone to do anything.
But religion forces you to believe
No,
every
no, no.
word.
In the Quran, Allah says, La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion. And Allah, there is a Surah Al-Kafirun, where Allah clearly states, Lakum dinukum
There
waliyadin.
are
To you
so
is your
many-
faith and mine. To me is mine.
I've gone through all this. There are so many contradictions. One ayah said this, other one says completely different. And even
I don't think you have studied the Quran. Come back next time when you have time.
Yeah, sure.
And inshallah we can talk about the Quran.
Yeah.
And in the meantime,
And-
find out about consciousness,
and there are,
whether it exists,
and there
whether
are
it's
lots
material
of-
or
There
immaterial.
are lots of documents and even YouTube videos claiming lots of, I mean, unscientific materials in the Quran. They're
But
very
Quran never
videos.
claimed to be scientific book.
Yeah.
Why would you say
So
it's unscientific?
If there's a book of God, through God,
Yeah.
then he should have known the truth. He shouldn't put any vague materials in
No,
there.
there's a difference between false and vagueness.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for your time, mate. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Jazak Allah Khair.